Joint meeting, Audit, Finance Committee, and City Council. Teresa.
Roll call. Councilmember DeGolia?
Here.
Councilmember Weiss?
Yep.
Councilmember
Here.
Whitmer? Vice Mayor Rumpus?
Here.
Mayor Lewis is excused. And we got finance members Polito,
Yes.
Massey,
Here.
Lee, Dillabo, and Hausman.
Lee and Dillabo said they step out and
Okay, we've got some members of the public. Do we have any comments limited to any items on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Why don't we turn it over to the Civic Center project naming opportunities? City Manager Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. You have the written report in front of you. At the last council meeting, the council asked, now asked that the council review and approve the naming opportunities list that they had presented expeditiously so that they may use that in their fundraising opportunities. So we contacted Beverly Lenahan, and she provided that information, and you have that in the staff report. What staff's looking for is some direction on those naming opportunities, some feedback for Atherton now, and if you wanted to make any adjustments or changes or other recommendations, it'd be appropriate now to do so, but it's an action item for you to move forward in some way or another. So, pleasure of the council.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand that before we dive in. An action item, as I look at the agenda, it says we're just accepting the report. You're looking for feedback. What's the action?
Review report from Atherton now regarding naming opportunities, provide feedback, and if appropriate, accept it. So you can modify it if you like through the feedback, or if you wanted to continue it to the next meeting so you could talk about it some more, totally your call.
Okay. Anybody go through the report itself? Or do you want to go into questions?
No, it's right to Q&A from the council or feedback.
Questions?
I just wanted to make sure that, I think the last time we talked about that, like for example in the library or in the civic center, that there would be something, a central plaque in the lobby that would name, we're not gonna have plaques all over the place. I think that we had discussed that at the council meeting, and that was my recollection, and I spoke to George, and he more or less had the same, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. That we weren't going to have plaques all over the place, except for maybe outside.
Thoughts on that? Comments, questions?
Well, I guess, I think what has been discussed is that there be a wall in the lobby.
Right.
That people, whether they have been named for something or not, would be listed based on their level of donation, some categories. And I thought I saw something about that in the staff report. Or I saw it somewhere. I don't see it right now in the staff report, but I guess I also assume that if somebody makes a donation based on a naming opportunity, that there's going to be some indication of that. Like if it's a room, say somebody decides to make an investment that enables them to name a room in one of the conference rooms in the library after Willie Mays or some other Atherton figure, or someone themselves, perhaps. I think that there'd be some kind of indication in that room that they'd make. It wouldn't like be the Bill Widmer room above the room as you walk in, but there might be a small notice in the room that says this room was made available by a generous donation from Bill Widmer.
That was my understanding as well. There'd be a main wall, but that if somebody had a room or something like that, there'd be a little, I don't know what.
Well, I recalled that we were having a donor wall that would be like a central plaque, and it would identify it, similar to what we're doing with the event card, and you see like churches and things like that, and they say this stained glass was donated by this person, this stained glass donated by, but there's not stuff all over the place. It's not like a museum. Okay.
Can I ask staff or Dee Dee, what is other people, I mean, what consensus, what Portola Valley, Woodside, what did they do?
Portola Valley has in the room or notes in the library that were donated by somebody, small plaques that say something like Rick had said, generously donated, or whatever the wording is. Small, discreet, and not
Clear.
flashing things in anybody's face. There's also a donor wall. We were also thinking of a donor wall, and some of these things have already been offered to donors, and I'm literally waiting to hear back. So I'm waiting to hear if we're going to change anything.
Yeah, no, I would say I'm comfortable with the subtleness of, an acknowledgement for their contribution, and, as things, bigger things, maybe, something else, but definitely a wall of appreciation for everyone.
I see now where I saw the donor wall, on the, I don't know if it's an exhibit or just part of the staff
Lobby
report.
entrance.
Yeah, where it says lobby entrance, it says $10 million to $100,000. So some concept of breaking people down by level of donation. But for example, if somebody invests $10 million to have the street named after them, I think we all expect that there will be signs at each end of that road that identifies it as Sobrato Lane or whatever. And if somebody were to, and if we approve it to invest $5 million for the refurb of this building, somewhere on it, it would say, the Lempress Atherton Hall or whatever it is.
I asked you to keep that confidential.
Due to the generosity.
But somewhere there'd be that indication rather than just be a wall, because otherwise there's not much difference if it's just on a wall and you're in a category of whether.
No, it should say
done
what
it.
they've done. I mean, it shouldn't just say, hey, $1 million donors and then a bunch of names. If they donated something like you talked about at the meeting, if they felt strongly about doing, for example, the children's reading area, it would say what they donated, as opposed to putting $1. I think it's tacky to say $1 million, $1 level.
I think the issue, if I've got it right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I'm hearing is the issue, would they only be identified once on a wall, or would they be identified in the children's area? Would there be a plaque that said, Joe Blow's a donation, generous donation or something as possible?
Yeah, my concern is there's lots of stuff listed here, and are we going to have plaques all over the place? That was, and I thought that we had discussed it and said we were going to try and keep it as centralized as possible, but the report didn't make that clear, other than that there was a donor wall. But so that was, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, just to make sure we're all.
I'm glad you did, because I think we're not all in the same place. I actually envision a donor wall and then also plaques, and if there's too many, we should have that conversation now, I guess. But I do think people are going to want to see their name on the fountain or on the whatever.
So I would also like to say that I don't want, I mean, I know we're not into the pathways or this and that, but I'm very supportive of making sure every donor has the ability to have a brick and a pathway, as kind of the history of Athens. This is going to be the biggest project this town's ever taken on. And I know that Stanford's done it, and I know people that have gone back 40 years later to see their father's contribution to things at Stanford. So, that's what this is all about. It's about building a town civic center and the contribution and the generosity from our members in this town. So, I think that's something that, I don't want it to be limited to, because I know people want to donate, may not be able to afford going on a wall. But they would definitely contribute to the project, and whatever people contribute, an acknowledgement and the purchasing of a brick is part of that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that in the meeting, that every donor should have a brick somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that if we want to limit the times that an acknowledgement is made, then we should limit the number of naming opportunities. And frankly, at this stage of you could always add more things as you go through it. I mean, we could devise other streets to name, but I think one, especially at this level, is the right thing to do. And I think that limiting the other opportunities is also the right thing to do, so we're comfortable with it. But I think that if somebody wants to make $1 million donation for the cafe, they're gonna wanna see a plaque at the cafe that says that this is donated, this is made possible by the generosity of Kerry West. I just think people are gonna want that.
If it's a small plaque, I think that's okay. I wouldn't wanna see Sobrano Hall on the front of this building, for example, okay, like you see,
On
or
some
the
libraries.
building, you go into a room and above the doorway, it's got this giant thing, it's about this big, and say, Carrie Weiss reading room. I mean, that gets into the tacky area.
I think we have agreement on that. And let me ask a process question. I don't know if it's George or Dee Dee, and that is, who makes that call? Who's making decisions about what the plaque is going to look like on such and such a building or on the fountain or whatever? How does that come out?
The acceptance of the donation is actually from Atherton now to the town council. You would accept the donation. I suspect there would be that
But if we
approval
check
level
to make sure
for-
it's going to be a tasteful as
right.
opposed to
That
a.
approval is the council, but in terms of the plaque and what it looks like, that's Atherton now.
Dee Dee?
Well,
I would suggest that right now, WRNS is, we're moving to the interior spaces of the facilities. WRNS is going to be coming up with ideas for this donor wall. They are also coming up with ideas for signage outside and around. I would guess that something very tasteful and small will be designed that we will recommend, or just tastefully design some nice little brass plaque or whatever it is that fits in the room. I was under the impression, I think we have too many things with TBDs at this point. Atherton now is meeting with Tom, the library, in about 2 weeks, this is way next week, to go through some of these library spaces and make sure they're actually places that should be or could be named. So I'm hoping, excuse me, that the list may shrink some, and either that or you take them out now and say, if we need them later, we'll add them back. I was under the impression that the road was the only thing we had to come back and ask permission, or say to you, we have somebody that's very interested in making a donation for this street in, let's say, the $10 million range, and here's the person's name, and ask kind of you to say, yes, great, and we would expect the name on a street sign. And I think that person would also expect to see a street sign with the name on it. And they'd also want to be on the donor wall. My feeling is you can't thank people enough. And so if the recognition and the thank yous are on the wall, you don't know where people are going to go in the Civic Center to see this. I don't want to look tacky. I know what Bill's saying. I don't want to look like we're burying people all over town, with markers. Or at the park, that used to be one of the things at the park, don't have all these memorials. So, I think we need to be very low-key, and we can't thank people enough.
So, I think, actually, I have a different perspective than what George stated. I don't think this should be up to Atherton now. I think this should be up to the council. And I would propose that we authorize the vice mayor now, since the mayor isn't here, to appoint a committee of 2 members of the council who will review final decisions and review what those plaques look like. I mean, this is going to be in public space. I really want the council to weigh in on it. And I'd be very comfortable with a committee to do that. I don't want to delegate that to an outside group. I think I agree with what Dee Dee said about these TBDs. If we're going to do this, we should give real direction about what the dollar amounts are, and I'm very comfortable to reduce the number of naming opportunities. I don't know that we need to go down to the level of the bricks and benches today, because that's a much broader thing, but I agree with what Carrie said about making that available to anyone who donates. Maybe you have to do at least $100 or something to be on a brick, but there should be some threshold, and we should set that threshold.
Yeah, I think that every room should be at least $100,000. And there were some rooms here, and then I agree that there are certain areas that are out there in the garden area and things like that. We can leave that for later, or a recommendation from Atherton now to come back.
I get just clarity on, I heard Rick make a suggestion that we have a subcommittee of the council, 2 people to review the aesthetics, I guess I'd call it, of the plaques and such. Is that something you agree with, Carrie? Or?
I don't think, I think that's a very small piece of this conversation. I think that ultimately, you know, we're all gonna have a chime in. I think that there's probably somebody that isn't here that probably wanna chime in on everything anyway, so no matter what, we're gonna be in that spot. If one doesn't get it, somebody's gonna complain, so I think we run a risk of creating a subcommittee to worry about a plaque. I would say that if we're creating a subcommittee to just monitor, you know, agree, again, it's gonna go back to, we've gotta come up with what basis, and the ones that we trigger to come back to council, I would say, okay, fine. But everybody's gonna wanna chime in. I mean, Rick's gonna feel left out, he didn't get a chime in, or Elizabeth, or myself, or, you know, we don't wanna put, in my opinion, if we put ourselves into that position, and we also have a delay factor with that, and I think that anything that's, Dee Dee?
My concern is, I don't care what the plaques look like, you guys can have a committee of however many people decide what the plaques look like when we get there. My concern is that this stuff's already being shown around to people. It's gonna be very difficult to be in negotiation with somebody and say, oh, time out, I gotta go to the council meeting in 3 weeks, and I'll be back to you after that to tell you whether or not they want you to have this space for that price. So I would encourage you to give us a list of what you want us to do, and understand that some of it is a negotiation with the donor within a small range to get this job done.
Yeah.
And I understand that the road sign is very important, and that I think we could manage some way to come back and make, you know, ask for your blessing.
Yeah, that is kind of what I was gonna echo. I don't want this to be a hindrance and a delay. I mean, if I'm gonna hand you money and here's your offer, boom. And I also, frankly, if it's not on this list and somebody says, you know, I would like to donate to this, I would like to be able to say, bring it back to us, or somebody, that I can totally understand, okay? Somebody is in love with a particular tree and wants to have that plaque near a tree, it's not on the list. It's not something that we shouldn't have that opportunity to bring back to us and say, hey, you know, my mom loved that tree, you know, I'd love to donate $10 million to protect that tree. And, you know, I think that we gotta be flexible enough, because it's a hard process.
Yeah.
You know.
That makes sense to me. And then when Action Now goes out, they make the representation that there's going to be a plaque, sort of TBD. It's going to be tastefully done, and we'll deal with that.
Yeah.
Should we go down through the categories?
Let me just clarify though, my suggestion on a committee was not just to approve what a plaque looked like.
Yeah.
It was to deal with anything around the naming opportunity issue, so that if there's something that comes up, somebody can screen it from the council before it comes to the whole council. And there may be some things that can just be decided by, it can be like what a plaque looks like, but it was brought, and it also gives an opportunity for one or more of the three of you to be involved in the direct civic center issues, whereas today, other than the meetings that we're having here, the only people that have been involved in the regular meetings have been myself and Elizabeth.
Does that change anything you said, Carrie?
If the two people, and take this not as trying to be offensive, you're probably already gonna know anything that's gonna happen. The three of us probably won't. So there's only gonna be one left out chicken. If the three of us can agree which one wants to be left out, I'm okay with that, because you guys are probably already gonna know. But again, it's gonna be a hindrance in a process. One's gonna feel left out. So I kind of feel if it's anything major, it's coming back to us anyway.
Okay.
So, you know, and it's kind of.
Okay.
Okay.
So on that, I guess the only other thing on the list that I have concern about, of course, I expressed my concern over the road. I know maybe somebody wants to buy the road, but I don't think that. I'm not sure you should be able to buy a road. I'm concerned about it's not a historic building, but it is a historic building, and so I would want to have that come back to the council if somebody was going to put their name on the council, depending on how we're going to label the town hall, okay, the historic town hall, what we're in now. Other than that, if you just agree to a number, or say if we're selling any rooms, it's 100,000 or more, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with not being on the committee. If the two of you guys want to be on the committee, I've got other things to do, and then look at plaques. And as long as it's all going to be done tastefully, so for me, I'm not 100% with the road and the former council chambers, however, so I'd like to see them at least come back. Other than that, I'm happy with the list, and and I think there's going to be other things, and I echo Carrie's comment on. I think that as many people who put in anything should be on a brick at least. So anyway, thank you.
I actually agree with what Bill just said, and I think they should come back for the council chambers.
I agree with that too.
So,
yeah, I agree with that too. So we've got down here 500,000 for the Heritage Room. I'm not sure why the conference room should be different from that. At a starting point, I'd probably use 500,000 for the rooms. I do think that there's the first room that's identified as digital design technology and maker room. I think that's wrong. I think there's two rooms. One is a studio designs a digital studio, and another is a maker space. But I haven't gone back and looked at Tom's program to see if I'm right or wrong about that, but I have a feeling that's two rooms. I would take the new council chambers entry area off. I think that's intended to be the vestibule that you would enter, and I'm not comfortable naming that.
Okay, good idea.
I'm not exactly sure what the admin grove is. That didn't conform. I looked at the program that was distributed, so that I'd like some of the language to be cleaned up so that it's the same as what we have in the stuff that WRNS has provided. That this is the program that I think, was this from the CCAC meeting?
Yeah, it was from a prior one. It's yet to be talked about during the landscape area, so the names might even change.
So, but the language that's on this is the same as the language that's on this diagram. I think the children's play area that's referenced here is probably the cedar tree play area. I just think we should have these be lined up. One other comment. My preference would be that staff redo this, include the dollar amounts, and that this be put on staff letterhead, on Atherton Town letterhead, rather than on Atherton Now letterhead. And I'm fine with not yet naming or identifying the net level of donation necessary to have a brick or bench named after you.
I think if you're going to redo this, Rick, I think that it would be appropriate to have both the town logo as well as Atherton Now, because
Great.
Atherton Now is
Great.
presenting it to the donors,
I think it's great.
and they ought to have some designation.
I think that's great.
a question for me, which is how much discretion are we giving to Atherton now in these dollar figures? So if somebody's within 10% of it, is that sufficient, or is there any guidance like that that's been offered, or what's your understanding of that?
It's pretty much a negotiation, but I think we will try to stick to the number presented unless we have to move a little bit. I see the world as possibly a little bit of negotiation.
Okay, now we say a little bit of negotiation, and I get what you're saying, we don't know until we know. If it's a 50% kind of thing,
No.
what's your? Okay. I got you.
I'd say within 20%. I think you have to give them some room.
I don't know that we go that low.
Yeah.
But I think we need, in one case, we may need to move a tad.
And might I also ask, in the same accord, it may be that you have somebody that's willing to offer you more but wants the heritage room, and you'd accept the larger amount in that sense as well. Does that sound
Yes.
reasonable?
Yes.
Okay,
That would be a nice
so
thing
we're
to
probably
do.
gonna be
I'm expecting that.
taking a wash.
My other question is on a lot of TBDs. How are we handling these?
Let's put-
What kind of guidance are we offering on the TBDs?
Well, I don't think anything. Well, Rick said that a room should be, a starting point should be $500,000. I had suggested on some of these TBDs on the second page, these spaces should be 100,000. That seems like, a number that we had, like the server room and things like that.
That seems fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different than a room.
Yeah, a room.
I'm
you
not
said
sure what the
$500,000.
that's my other question. It says multi-purpose room 1 and 2.
Listen, this list started last fall, and there were all kinds of things floating around, and they're still floating around. tie down the TPDs. I'm not sure, depending on the size of some of the rooms, that they should be $500,000. I mean, let's just see what we got over there. And the cases, cases, what are the cases' purpose and what are they doing? So the TPDs need to be a little bit flushed out, figure out exactly if they're there and what we should be asking.
Yeah,
Oh, those be places where they have like displays with books in them?
That's what, books or heritage stuff, or there's this Legends of Atherton idea where there might be sports stuff there, or authors of town who would have books displayed there, or other corporations that have been founders in town that might want a story or some logo, whatever the material that we had donated or can think of putting in there. So that's what these cases may be.
So those should be relatively
And there's some
inexpensive.
idea that this room will have some cases as well.
Yeah,
So
those should be about
some of this
$2,000.
needs to be, as I said, flushed out.
But that's where
Yeah.
an ad hoc subcommittee might come in handy over the next couple of weeks to help Atherton now flush those things out, given the feedback of the council today. With that all in mind,
Whatever it is, we need to be able to work fairly quickly.
I,
Are you on the board with subcommittee idea?
yeah, I think that if it's helpful, I just wouldn't want it to be a hindrance, and I wouldn't want Bill to feel unhappy.
If you don't wanna be on it, I'll be on it, that's fine, I can work with Carrie.
Oh, I don't, gosh, I don't like it, no.
That's fine, I said,
No, I was
I
kidding.
said I'd be happy to have you two guys do it.
Actually, I was just gonna say the same thing, you
Hey
guys.
guys, flip a coin.
Right.
Alright,
Yes.
Carrie, yeah,
Yeah.
to work with you.
Hi.
Fine.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the
So, yeah.
prestigious appointment.
Yeah,
Given that feedback that everybody heard, Carrie and Bill will work with Atherton now and staff to flush out the list and the TBDs and the naming spots.
yeah,
The one point of clarification, I'm sorry, Kate, I want to make sure we all get, I heard Rick say the new council chambers entry area is something to take off this list.
Yeah,
Is that something that there's agreement on?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
That was.
I'm sorry, Kate.
I was just also gonna kind of put my 2 bits in and say that, if there's any problems with anything, I mean, it's not, everything's locked in stone, and if something else comes up that you find, bring it back to us. I mean, I think that's just, the communication's gonna be important. If there's a problem with something and somebody has an idea and it's on your side, please, reapproach us and,
Have we given you any input that messed up anything you've already talked to people about?
No.
Okay.
No, unless somebody comes back and tells me they want this town hall, then I don't think we're there yet.
Can I ask a question?
Who wants to-
I presume somehow this becomes tax deductible, this donation?
We're a 501c3, yes.
Okay. So these naming areas in the library that is fully funded, what's that about?
It's a civic center project, so they can contribute to the library. The library has absolutely no problem doing that, allowing the naming opportunity in support of a bigger, broader
Where's the
project
money go?
to the overall project cost.
So just to be clear,
So
no one's
they get
buying.
something named in the library, but the money goes to pay for your new office?
Or
That's
the-
okay,
the site
I'm cool with it,
improvements, or,
Okay.
Yeah.
general project.
It's a little misleading. We've been using the phrase buying a street. That's people
Can
aren't-
they
aren't
do
buying
that
a
with
street.
the way the library funds are construed
No.
from the county?
You misunderstood it. Nobody's paying for the specific thing. They're making a contribution to the civic center project in the amount, and in exchange for that, they're getting named for something. And yes, the library can,
I got that too, but the library funds, as I understand it, are separate from what Dee Dee's trying to do to raise money for the civic center. And I don't know how you can say I'm donating money to the library and putting it in George's office,
You're getting naming
Civic
rights.
You're not
Civic
donating
center
money to the library.
Space.
Yeah.
but you are donating money to the library if you're getting a room named for
no,
your
you're not,
library.
actually, you're not. You're donating money to the town of Atherton for the civic center
I got it,
project.
it's a mood.
And-
we're moving the plaque from the
Yeah,
civic center
yeah,
into the
exactly.
library.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
No, thanks for that.
Are we, other issues, council and staff, you guys?
I'm good.
Guidance? Dee Dee, are you,
You good?
you good?
I'm good, so just let me know who the flip of the coin is.
It was Bill and I.
Bill and Carrie.
We won.
Alright,
Lost.
Bill took one step backward.
There is
so we'll
Sort of
meet with
executives.
Tom and, kind of sort this out and then come back with or maybe you should give us a skinny down proposal, what's decided.
Yeah, I can provide some feedback from the council's comments this evening to you, and then loop in our two council members and in a committee meeting, and away we go.
You got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Thank you, Edie.
Great.
Shall I move on to Robert?
Thank you. Today's meeting is the general fund operation budget review. So I'm trying to go through this quickly and concisely. So
Like the pictures, those are nice.
just wanted to go through this, and we can answer questions towards the end. So yeah, George alluded to, there's some nice pictures of our civic center and current facility. So the general fund, as you all know, is the primary operating fund of the town. All revenues and receipts that are not designated by funds or law come into the general fund. It's the main operating account of the city. So all expenditures include administration, finance, planning, building, public works, and public safety. And any funds needed for capital improvements that are not funded by other funds come from the general fund. So in the staff report, this PowerPoint presentation kind of does an overview of what's in the staff report, as was in it, as you've all read it. So here in this slide, this is the slide without the parcel tax, ERAF, and transfers in. So as you can see, the 15-16 budget, the 15-16 estimate at mid-year, and then what our proposed budget is. So we proposed $13.4 million in revenues to $12,056,000 in expenditures, for a net change in fund balance of $1.3 million. Now we're showing this slide. This next slide is with the parcel tax and ERAF. So that's $4.83 million in revenues to $12 million in expenditures. So the net change in fund balance is $2.7 million.
That's just the amount of ERAF
Yes, sir.
that's allocated to police operators.
That's
Yes.
Parcel tax.
So in this slide right here,
Not the whole, not the $1.8 million.
no,
Correct.
at 372,000 is in here, and it's 14.8 million, 372,000 of the parcel tax, and then the budget of 1,033,000 in ERAF funds are included in that 14.8 million. So this next slide here shows, pulls in the transfers in. As you recall, last year we had a 4.2 million transfers out from the general fund. 2.2 million was for CIP unidentified projects. The remaining amounts were for 680 for OPEB, and then ERAF, workers' comp from ERAF. So that's that 4.2 million. So there's 4.7 million in the staff report. The staff is making a recommendation that about 453,000 be for pension liability set aside reserve, and then another 112,000 would be for the workers' comp equity, for the minimum equity reserve for this year, and then the remaining amount, which is 500,000, would be for the additional for the capital facilities replacement reserve. So that's what that 4.7 million is. I mean, sorry, the 4.1 million is for CIP. So 4.1 million CIP, 112 for workers' comp, and then the 493 for ERAF pension.
So the,
Yes, sir.
so the workers' comp, that's a reserve.
That's to pay down.
It's not like last year when we went ahead and we paid the outstanding balance because we had some people that were.
Right, and that was to pay off the claims, the existing claims from the past couple of years. So what's happening is the claims are continuing.
Right.
So
So you're
this is
estimating
to-
going forward.
right, this is to get this true it up for this year, and then next year we'll probably go through this exercise and see what the minimum is next year. And if we stay with this component, maybe we kind of alleviate, mitigate that, 4 years from now, we're paying 600,000, so we're staying with it.
So when you say true up, you're gonna pay any current outstanding obligations and bring the capital account up to the required amount.
Well, right now, that 112,000 is our negative equity reserve right now, currently in this year. So we would pay that, get that to zero, and replenish that equity reserve. And then we we get our assessments that we currently pay every year, and right now that's projected to be about $133,000 for next year. So we would pay that as our assessment next year, and then we'll see if our negative equity reserve dwindles, we'll just pay up the true. It should be, next year it's 50,000, we just pay 50,000.
So we're required to keep a certain amount in our equity reserve. What we're doing is balancing that out. What he means by true up is not paying up claims, it's just restoring the reserve to the level. So if we have claims and it caps our reserve requirement, you have to balance that back up to the minimum threshold.
But that's an unrestricted fund, right? It's not.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And then when George and I spoke about it, looking at all the different projects we have, I think that the 112 was good, and
453 was a pension.
yeah, so I
Set
understand
aside.
we're setting up a side fund for it, and while I'm all for all that, I think that we have substantial capital requirements for all these master plans we have here. So I'd like to suggest to my colleagues here that we consider at this point in time, we can always move it back later, and it is an unrestricted fund, but we put that in the capital fund, because we've got these extra projects. And we,
Yeah, I was gonna support the same issue, and it's, the capital issue should take precedence, as you point out.
Potholes. So Bob, before you do, just a real quick question. I want to make sure I understand. When you say that, what exactly are we talking about there?
these numbers here.
So 1,033,000 and
Yeah.
ERAF, those three numbers that Robert's talking about, the 112, the 500, and the 453, are dividing up that 1,033,000.
It's 166.
1,066,000, sorry, to allocate that out to those three pots. One of it's the 500 facility reserve, 500K to the capital facility reserve. The other is the 112. The 453, we're suggesting creating an internal town-held side fund for pension obligations in the future.
And it's not like restricted, it's just we're setting it up, and then if for in the future, if let's say we need those funds, we just use those funds for other things. That's what I was.
I'm totally confused.
So,
Bob, do you want to
I
do
have a question that might help. In the budget, I've been out of town, so I didn't have time to go back and check the line items in the budget, but in the budget, we have the normal cost for our pension liabilities. And we have this magic amount that they've come up with that they're gonna charge us every year, a lump sum dollar figure.
Right.
And that lump sum dollar figure for the coming year, I believe, is like 548,000.
442.
Okay. So both those amounts are in the operating budget, correct?
It's in the operating budget. It just happens that it almost looks like it's the same amount.
No, I understand.
Yes.
So why wouldn't, there must be pros and cons to getting that out of the operating budget and paying it out of the ERAF, particularly since the numbers are fairly close.
Yeah, I think Bill actually brought that up during our one-on-one, is we could use instead of 453 going to the side fund, pay 442 and directly pay that operational cost.
548.
Yeah.
Pay
And
directly
that gives
pay-
us additional,
We have the total.
that would also give us additional budget flexibility, agility as well.
$500,000 worth.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And eliminate creating yet one more fund that we're, the side fund that we're gonna internally, that blah, 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 blah. That's what I would do, is take, and then you gotta jury rig the rest of the numbers to make them come out. The workers' comp is a no-brainer, you gotta do that, but that would reduce a little bit that flows to the capital improvement project fund, but we get it back
Yeah,
at the
so
end
one,
of the year.
one of the things, if we,
Sorry, Rick, we're trying to get clarity on some points.
oh, we're on page 2 of 15 in the pack. We're looking at the table, it's on 2 of 15 in the pack.
Rick's with us.
I was looking at the slide.
Yeah.
Oh, so
There's
so this
actually
is broken out?
Yeah.
And we're
I see.
specifically talking about ERAF funds.
Okay, that helps a lot.
So my other comment would be, if we do that, like you and I had talked about, And that essentially it's not quite, but it's almost the cost, for example, in the police budget.
It helps a lot.
So that would give them the flexibility in their budget, so that then the parcel tax could all go into the CIP.
Well, as we continue along, you'll note from Robert's slides here, the parcel tax and ERAF, they're below the line, and they're
Yeah.
not technically needed
Yeah,
to balance our operational
Right.
budget. Is that
right.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they're already kind of surplus funds. So we're taking the 558 that Bob's talking about
Right.
and paying it using ERAF instead of an operational
Yeah,
cost.
that's what you and I talked about
Right,
yesterday.
so it
as
frees
well.
up some of those operational costs and basically just moves it from here to here.
Right.
And we end up with more money going to our CIP anyway, at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's where we wanna end up being, I think, at this point in time, is what my recommendation is. As opposed to building another side fund for some other additional eventuality, which probably will come, but right now we have other needs. I mean, we've done all these master plans, we have unfulfilled things. We talked about for example, the bike plan. You know, we put away and forecast $1 million, but just to do Atherton Ave, it's like $3 million. So, you know.
So what'll happen is as we flow through this, you're gonna see that $4.1 million that we're talking about later on, moving to the CIP. That's in that 4.7 that Robert's talking about up there. It'll actually be moving in $4.5 million.
Right.
Well, just a point of clarification, so I get it. So we clearly have demands for some infrastructure-related projects, right, or some projects. At the same time, if we are in a good financial situation now, does it make sense to set aside some things for a liability that we anticipate to come down the road? Because who knows what's going to come down the road.
And I think that's the intention, is it would be a reserve, a set aside reserve, just like we have our 50% set aside reserve, 20%. That 453 would be a set aside reserve for pension. So it wasn't like we would take it and put it in a different fund, we would just hold it as a reserve.
I'm sorry, Robert, okay, so what's
Well,
your thought about that? Are you
my
saying you think
feeling
that's not the
is
best use
that
of
I
it?
think we're thinking there's a number of capital projects that are gonna be coming in the very near future. And the more we can put the things in the right bucket now, I think we would be wise to go do that. But I do recognize through my discussions with George and what Robert has said, if we put it in any of these funds, it's a non-restricted fund, and the council can always meet and say we're gonna move it back if we need it. But I think putting something in a fund and saying it's gonna be here for a specific purpose and then reversing it later doesn't make any sense. You know, I just think that we have a lot of capital projects right now, and you know, some potential very large needs, and that it would be, to me, it makes sense to just put it in the capital plans.
So I'm gonna echo something, but like adding a caveat. I'm okay with breaking down, you know, let's just say hypothetically, you know, for the bike pedestrian pathway, blah, blah, blah. An allocation towards it, with the caveat, you know, if necessary, these funds.
Oh, I wouldn't put it in a specific category, I just put it in the CIP.
You're not breaking it down. You
Yeah.
just want it in a pot.
Yeah, in a capital improvement pot.
You know,
With that same caveat.
with the same caveat.
Yeah.
I think I hear what you're saying. I get it. I just think that there is some concern, and I think that let's say a perception maybe on the residents' side is that there's certain people, like I'm going to talk about rail. So on rail, they would really love to see the town move forward to put quad gates on Watkins. And if there was just a token of a sign that this may be in a positive direction, still by adding a gate, they would be so appreciative of something that they've been working on, which would be in the long-term visual goal of the town, versus it sitting in the pot and then this council changes and then their decision, you know, oh gosh, you guys screwed us out of quad gates at Watkins. I would like to say that we've recognized a lot of these capital improvement projects, and we're committed to using these funds and moving forward in accomplishing some of the long-term goals of this town. You know, like the pedestrian bike path, like, for example, the Watkins Gate. You know, just kind of a token to the people that are here to say, hey, guys, you guys aren't just gonna put it in this big pot. You guys don't need any money from me. You know, you don't need to put any money towards the channel, I think if we break things down a little bit better, my opinion, you're kind of telling your residents that we do have a vision that we're going to accomplish some of these goals, and we've contributed, like I do feel is a fault, because we haven't had the funds in creating money aside for the Civic Center. You know, most towns may have set aside funds over years. If we have done that 50 years ago, we wouldn't have a problem today.
But if you put it in account, if I could just,
Yeah.
one additional comment
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
If you put it in and say, hey, I wanna break it down and it's gonna be this much for quad gates, this much for a channel, this much for this, then if we have, in future deliberations this year, we say, hey, you know what, this is the most important project, we wanna reallocate this money here, then there's disgruntlement on the part of the people who felt it was allocated for them, as opposed to leaving it there and being able to make a decision downstream.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we're always, I mean, there may be always a project that would set precedence, an emergency, a need. But I think that if we are very clear in having the caveat of, you know, this is what's our intent now. A council tomorrow can change it. We all know that. But the reality is our intent today is to try to accomplish some of these things and not just, you know, ask for money and have a melting pot and not looking
But
forward.
there's a very detailed map of what these projects are, what
what
we
their
think
costs
they're
are.
gonna cost, and what we're funding it for. I don't think you need to
You-
say that 125,000 of it is going to project A or B, but if anybody wants to know where this money's going and why we have it all, and why we aren't giving it back to the taxpayers,
Right.
we've got a detailed thing that we can point to.
But presumably, if we're putting more money in a pot that's got a list of projects assigned to it, people are gonna have the assumptions that that list is either gonna get accomplished more quickly, or something's gonna happen different.
Whether it's gonna get
I would
accomplished.
hope so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
George.
so I mean, we gotta give some kind of
council
assurance to
later on
that.
changes
Right.
then they get to explain that, not
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
One comment on our CIP. Public Works is very, very busy with Marsh Road project, the Hawk Beacon, the Civic Center project.
Yeah.
If and when that moves forward in the next year and a half and we break ground, we're gonna be taxed
Yeah.
from a manpower perspective. So the first 2 to 3 years of the CIP, we'll be filling potholes and doing things like that, but we're not gonna be doing big grandiose
Right, right.
projects. That'll be in years 3 or 4 and 5 of the CIP.
That's to say you're envisioning carrying forward a good pot of money for a number of years.
Right, instead of assigning it out to big projects.
I'm okay with myself personally with the larger approach, Bob's approach, you know, and long as we parallel it with the massive projects that we have, the cost of some of these projects, our bag pedestrian plan, we have to have an answer. You know, not an excuse and an answer, that these are some of the things that we envision moving forward, you know, while we're carrying this, you know, CIP fund that, you know, we're looking at. We're not breaking it down on purpose, you know, but right now, for the next 2 or 3 years, we're gonna be project, you know.
But we have.
George, I don't know why you said that, cause I mean, you're talking about 2.3 million in this coming fiscal year, 2.1, over $2 million every year. I mean, I kinda call that major for Atherton.
It is major, but if we start adding in more bike ped projects and more drainage projects on top of it by allocating these money, raising the expectation that we're gonna be doing those projects in years 1, 2, and 3 of the CIP, they're not gonna get accomplished. We're gonna end up getting behind. So
On the other hand, I don't think you wanna start saying all this money is for projects we're gonna do in 2035.
Well, no,
I
no.
mean,
Right.
this 5-year plan, which I think that's a good horizon.
Right.
This 5-year plan, it should be, and I think it is getting updated on a regular basis with what can we do next?
Correct. I'm not saying stop what's in there now. I'm saying let's not, in years 1, 2, and 3, make it twice as big.
We just can't get it
hold on.
done.
Rick's got a point, Rick.
But I'm concerned about what you said also, along the lines that Bob is expressing, not because it's don't want to push things out, but because I think there's some other projects that we've targeted doing in the shorter term, being in the next couple years. Not the size of the Atherton Channel project on Marsh Road, but we've talked about addressing the Class 2 bike lane on Middlefield Road. That's a big project for us. That's probably $1 million project. And we've talked about doing something in the park. I think removing the road or the fire turnaround. That's a big project for the park.
And the school district at Los Lomitas may be saying, we're ready to do this, and here is what Stein on the bottom line.
Right, and
that's
maybe he's
$2 or
hoping
$3
that
million.
get pushed off for a year or so. but I just don't want us to have the impression that we're gonna put on some back burner meeting 3, 4, 5 years out, anything from the bike ped master plan or the park master plan.
If it's in that list that Bob's talking about, I think when we finished, I think you understood what I was saying.
Yeah.
If it's in that list already in our 5-year CIP, that's a planned project.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is we don't go back to the well and say, let's see what else we can add. We've got $4 million. Let's-
I actually, from the standpoint of taxpayers, I mean, the taxpayers are paying that money in now. The money's in there. I'm not that comfortable with saying we're not gonna work on it for 4 years. I just, it feels to me like we're taking money from taxpayers. We've got a purpose for that money, the need for it. And it just feels, I don't say feels, it's troubling to me that the reason we wouldn't proceed is because we're so constrained on our with our resources here to get it done. And therefore, we're going to take money from the taxpayer today, and we're not going to do anything with it for 3 years. We're going to sit it in a pot. That doesn't feel.
We're going to plan for
But
projects.
no offense to it,
Yeah,
the taxpayer, whatever the cost of the project is, those are escalating, and we may take several years to accumulate the funds to cover a cost, like, for example, the Los Lomitas project. So I do agree, you're right, we do have some projects that I'm gonna echo, think that we can't do projects. If we have an opportunity to accomplish something that would benefit the people in the western section by putting a retention, issue in the, we get that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's something we'd have to adjust. Obviously, we're not making that decision now, but 2 years from now, that might be something that, hey, wait a minute, we got funds that are here, boom, this project's good, and it's a huge benefit,
And they would be bearing a lot of the responsibility for managing the construction because it's on their property and their board is doing, it's their contractor and things like that.
Right.
So that seems to be, we'd have to be comfortable with it but we're gonna be a partner and we're gonna be a funding partner essentially.
And
We
those are easy projects. And you're
But
going to
that's
get
several
into
million
this,
dollars.
Yeah, we're not gonna limit ourselves to saying, we're not gonna take projects, because that's gonna be something that if Los Lomitas says we're ready to go next year, we'd find an opportunity, we'd contract people to make it happen.
I think staff is just saying we've got our hands full with some big projects, and they don't want us to throw more stuff in that aren't already in the works from the master plan.
Absolutely.
And I have no problem with that perspective, because we've got a lot in the works.
Well, I do have not a problem necessarily, but if we have a larger amount of money available than we thought we did, I think it's our job to think at least about, should we be spending that money, should we be moving that up? Because you talk about things getting more expensive. Right now in construction, we're actually chasing it. You push something out of here, our money just went down 20% or 30%.
So I don't disagree with you, but I think that now's not the time, and I'll say why. We're moving forward on this Civic Center project. We're gonna build this thing. We don't know how we're gonna pay for it. We may have to discuss that at the end of this year, and having unrestricted general funds could be helpful. I mean, of course, we've got a bond, we'd have to go back to the public, but hopefully we're gonna do it privately, but we're taking on this we're funding this enormous project on Marsh Road. That's gonna tie, and sure, staff isn't doing it themselves, but they're gonna be overseeing it. It's gonna tie them up. We're moving forward with this Atherton fiber deal. That's gonna take some mind share. We've got a lot of stuff in the work. And I really want us to do a noticeable piece from each of these master plans so that the public, just along with what you're saying, sees that we're really doing something. We're not just doing consulting studies, right, which our master plans were. I want them to see, I mean, I've said this a lot, I want them to see this Class 2 bike lane going into Middlefield Road. And I want to get feedback from them about whether they like it, so that we can then decide if we're gonna put another one on Selby Lane or on wherever the next one is. But I think it's really important that people see that we're doing things, because we have the money to do them. I do think as we roll into this year, we've got a lot going on. People are gonna see us doing things, not the least of which is Marsh Road. But
And the parallel to that is the community can only take so much during a fiscal year. So much tearing up the road, so much restriping this, so much construction activity, so much park activity.
Yeah.
It could,
I'm gonna say, again, Mike, I echo with what you're saying, and if we didn't have our master plans in play and all of them in play, we have opportunity. We're just gonna be responsible in how we feed the public how many of these projects we can feed at a time. But we do definitely have these visions of, we're gonna get these done. And I think that that's part of our responsibility. We're not just taking your money and not doing anything with it. And we're trying to be very responsible in the monies, and we're thankful for the monies that we have. So, yeah, I hear your concerns.
Michael, I think until the funding, if any of these funds might need to be used for the civic center, and we might have to go to the voters to get that okayed, and until we decide what's gonna happen with the renewal of parcel tax, then we might have the problem that you're talking about, where we're gonna accumulate money for projects that are out 6 or 8 or 10 years, and then I'm like you, I'd have a big problem with that.
Yeah.
But I think, given the stuff we have on the books and the funding we have in place, and George and I have spent a lot of time spreadsheeting this stuff, and given the uncertainty with the two items I mentioned, the parcel tax and the civic center, I think we're cool right now, and I would endorse putting more money in the capital project fund.
Yeah.
The amount, roughly the amount, I would favor paying off the full cash amount of the unfunded liability obligation for the year, instead of some arbitrary number going to some, yet one more arbitrary holding tank.
Yeah.
But I think we've got a position we can definitely defend against anybody, whether it's the Atherton recorder or whoever it might be. We're doing things the right way, I think.
The Atherton magazine.
Right, good.
So just to clarify on that unfunded portion, that 548 is already built into the budget. That 453 is an additional set aside.
I understand that, what I'm saying,
Okay.
take it out of the budget. Let's pay it with the,
Right.
with the ERAF money, free up that money in the budget, and then it's totally unrestricted, and it'll flow back to where we,
Well, then when we make the decision on any cutting up of the parcel tax, which we'll be doing shortly, we can say, we'll put all that, since you don't need that, since we've just funded everything and made budget agility in all the different departments, we can put $1.8 million into the CIP from the parcel tax.
Okay, so this 4.7 does include currently 4.1 towards unallocated CIP. That's 4.7.
Yeah.
And then we'll revisit that, so it'll be more. Then it'll be the 4.1, so it'll be 4.6.
Yeah.
And then the 112 will be the,
well, no.
workers' comp.
The 112 will go, gets paid.
the four,
Yeah, I guess that would be.
453 would go in this.
That would be correct, yeah.
Right. We're just shifting it, so the CIP will grow from 4.1 to 4.5.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, when you put it into the workman's comp, should that be really a restricted fund as opposed to an unrestricted fund? Because we know we're incurring the cost now. So why would we have it in an unrestricted fund where we could?
We're gonna take that.
It goes
we're
away,
gonna pay
they'll
it.
write a check.
That's not
Right,
that's not an
check.
unrestricted
It's
fund.
in-
That's
in-
paid.
The general fund's gonna pay for that. It's gonna, we're,
Okay,
yeah, we're just gonna write a check. We're not gonna leave it on the
Okay.
side for.
okay, all right, fine, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the,
And we've read it.
yeah, I'm gonna go through these things quick. So here's property taxes, as you can see in our report, they've been growing. So this includes the ERAF, so the 10.2 million includes the ERAF, the 1,033,000, and the remaining 9.2 is property taxes. ERAF over the years, you can see how it's trended. It went from 1,020,000 in 13-14 to now projected at 1,033,000. So nice little trend pyramid steps.
I don't like pyramid.
It's not.
I like to see it
It's
keep
not.
going.
It's not
Like
a
this
nice
slide.
trend.
I
It's
like
not
to
a
see
nice
it.
It's going the
trend.
wrong way.
This is a better slide.
You're saying it's a nice trend. It's not. Okay.
It's going back. But again, this is just kind of it kind of retouches on what we've been discussing about the ERAF and what happens.
Well,
you know,
and to be
the
clear,
state
some
does
of that is the scale
reduce
you're using on the chart. I mean, it's It has gone down, but it's gone from 1.2 to
Right.
1.033. Okay. Yeah.
It's still higher than it was in 13-14.
Right.
And the 15-16, that's real money, that came in, it's not an
That
estimate.
1,066 is real money. That
Yeah, so it says
the red
estimate on
is-
your
Right.
legend, it says estimate, but it's not, it's
That's okay.
actual.
And that budget, we budgeted 1.2 million,
right.
so we came in lower. So that's why we're budgeting at 1.33, just we anticipate maybe there could be a continued decrease.
Right.
Franchise fees, you recall that that's kind of, they're basically static. We're budgeting them at 834,000 for this fiscal year. Sales tax, you can see, we're at 16-17, 300,541 is what our budget is. That 687,000 includes that, and 14-15 includes, the 380,000 increase that we got one-time sale last year on 14-15, so that's why you see it's 687 and 14-15.
So is the 15-16 estimate an actual, or is that an estimate still?
It's still an estimate, and I think it's at 434,000 because the triple flip sunset in this past December, and the triple flip was a swap. We would get property taxes for sales tax, that 0.25% sales tax we weren't getting. Now we're getting it back. So that 434 is a true up of that. So it's about 178,000 that we'll get this year. But next year, we have no idea how that's going to change. So again, we're just being, conservative on the sales tax side. So that's why we're budgeting at 300,000.
Okay.
Once we get our little cafe, we'll be up at 600.
So you consider that's only $5,000. You're calling that conservative why do you call that conservative?
Well, we're budgeting it based off of where we've been
Because
at.
we got
I mean, I think
434
that-
this year.
Which we knew was
Yeah.
high. And if you look at the other two numbers, you got 234 and 295.
If you look at the
Yeah,
actual for
not gonna
13-14 was 234,000 compared to now, that triple flip's gonna have an impact. We've been receiving that triple flip in property taxes, and so now it's gonna come back now in sales tax. But it's been a portion. It's been coming from property taxes as sales tax. Now that's going away, so it's all that 25%, that 0.25% is now, it's all sales tax driven. So I don't know how that's gonna fluctuate.
In sales, how does sales tax get to us? It's in arrears or in advance?
It's, we get sales tax in advance. So, and the way it does is they see how you did last year, and that's how they advance you every quarter. But I've talked to the Board of Equalization, when it's one-time things like what happened in 14-15, they look at that, and they're not gonna advance you what you did last year and then say, oh, next year we gotta deduct. So they basically look at those anomalies, and then they advance you based on what you did the previous year, and then they true it up at the end of each quarter. So, yeah, so.
Kind of hard to predict sometimes.
Right.
Fine.
So building fees, they're gonna be static. I think we're about 1.6 million, so 1,639,000 for this year. It's down about 21,000. Just like in the staff report, it's just right now building permits have been they've slowed down. We don't think it's an indication. We'll continue to monitor that going forward in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I think graphically, like Mike pointed out, if you would change the scale a little bit, I mean, it looks like it's a dramatic fall off and it's $10,000.
All right, it's just the increments.
So you'd prefer it start from a zero scale? Just for
Easier to
easier.
little.
I mean, this looks like, hey, the sky is falling, okay? And we're saying we're gonna be $21,000 less on a total of 1.6 million.
That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
All right, general business license, again, there were about 227,000 in fiscal year 14-15, we received 256,000. They're basically been static the last couple of years, and again, we're just monitoring it.
Let's get on
And then we'll change the scale on this one. It's a 10,000 increment, we'll make it 20,000.
The scale's most creative.
Okay.
As long as the numbers is what's important. fees have been static, so we're budgeting out 232,816.17. Actual 14-15 was 293. So we'll do our fully budget 257, but 232 next year, and it's in correlation to how the building revenues are. Public Works, we're budgeting 283,000. This majority of it's all encroachment permit fees in this area. Park fees, they've been increasing every year. 13-14 they were 100,000, 14-15 actual was 177. Well, we project in 16-17
So,
197,000.
on that, I know that a couple of us were on the council when we were saying, hey, let's start we're gonna make all this money on weddings. And the majority of this is day use permits and meetings. It's not the weddings. And so, I guess sometime maybe in a future period, we could understand, and we should go back and triangulate when we made the decision to go back with weddings and look at the costs we're associating with fixing everything up. And when we just made a big investment, for example, with the event garden, I mean, we didn't, but of course the foundation did. And we're not really making that much money on weddings.
Actually,
Well, 14-15
it's the largest.
Right.
But if you went back to where it was before, what Steve had told us we were going to make, and the projections that were in that staff report, as I'm saying,
It's not as large as that, because we clamp down on the events at the park. We don't let it get out of control. We could.
No, we don't want to.
Right.
We talked about that.
And there's
So
been
we're
a lot of
artificially-
construction,
Yeah.
and so that hinders the wedding component. And most of the weddings are in the summertime, right?
We should raise the
Spring.
rate for the weddings.
In the
Yeah,
fall.
I guess that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
But
the rates we can
That's
deal
kind of
with.
where I'm
but-
going.
Are we scheduled for the summer already at the weddings, I assume, and are we expecting a busy one?
Yeah, the catering by Dana fee went up to 66 just this past month, so
It's starting.
they're peaking up.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have a lot of activity with weddings this summer at the park.
Yeah, normal
I
activity.
think that we all know, we all had this discussion a few weeks ago, we run the risk of, if we advertise or do more, then
Yeah.
run the commercialization of the
Yeah,
park. So
exactly.
I think it's probably kind
Well,
of
maybe
acceptable.
the wedding fees, I think, we might want to raise. I
Right.
guess.
Well, in 14,
Robert's
15.
prenup,
Oh, that,
Yeah.
Robert's prenup.
oh,
that
thank you very
we
much.
gave you.
That's
Was wondering when that was
The
gonna
last
come
column
into
there,
play.
16-17, at the bottom, so the program revenue on the bottom right-hand side.
Yes.
Social fees, weddings,
Oh, yeah.
meeting fees, it gives you a list of where each one is for the current fiscal year,
Yeah.
recommended fiscal year.
All right.
Yeah, the park fees have doubled in the last 4 years. Just to-
Right, it has.
Yeah.
And in 14-15, wedding fees was 26,000 is what we received of that 177,000. In park fees, 26,000 was due to weddings. Majority, the other part, 57,000 was for social fees, and then the remaining are meeting fees and class fees.
I thought the last time we went over this, we decided we were gonna push the tennis and the play school from the general fund into the park fees category.
It's on the sheet here,
It's on this, but it's not on this
because it's all within the
general fund.
general fund, yeah,
I
all
know.
of it. There is no,
This is just the park fee.
This is
under
just the
general fund.
service fees.
Right, right.
I mean,
Park
this
fees.
could include the play school and the tennis, but it doesn't.
I have another slide that does include it.
right.
This is just
I thought we
park fees.
changed that several years ago.
No, we had a discussion last month, we had a discussion at the council
We
meeting.
went over this a couple of years ago. It said it's gonna come out of the general fund. I was on the committee then and go into a parks budget.
It's probably something that comes up every year.
Yeah.
Well, the park is under the general fund. I mean, the general fund supports the park. I mean, there's no way.
But it doesn't create a clear picture of the park's revenue
And that's
structure.
what
That's what this is.
this is.
I get it on this one, but again, what you're saying, and Rick is absolutely right, it was not in the budget as
It's not,
presented.
it's not in this.
That's just the part. This is just the part fee. But I'm gonna a slide further. You'll see this.
But you're not listening, Robert. That's right, I understand
But it's not
exactly
here.
what this is.
Right.
But it doesn't include the two things that are over here.
And
And
referring-
this is all from the general fund, I totally get that. But it would make more sense to us for it to be here, and it could be here.
So the category of park fees would include tennis
That's all.
and the,
And we've had
high
this
school.
discussion a few times. It's not that big a deal, frankly, because we can find it, but it would just, this is called park fees, it would make sense.
Having served on
To
Park
us.
and Rec a number of years ago, the thing was the park always loses money, the park loses money, we should shut it down, it's horrible, we're all gonna die. And here we're saying, taking this money, we're not showing it properly in the revenue stream under what I would call generally accepted accounting principles. It's in the park, it should be in the park budget.
But the park is, even when you put it in, the
Park
park
is
is
part
still
of a
losing
larger
money.
facility. I
We're still
got
all
it.
gonna die, so you know.
So what was
I
your
get
point? What was your point there?
So then what would occur every year is the council would have to actually legislate an interfund transfer from the general fund to the park fund.
The mechanisms I don't care about. I'm
But
just
I
saying
think-
from
but I
an
don't think
accounting
that-
standpoint,
that
the resident
this
says
isn't in
the
a set,
park
this is
loses
part of the
money.
general fund.
Yeah, all the park revenues except for things in the tennis fund are part of the general fund.
Oh, the tennis fund is okay,
Yes.
but, so the tennis fund, because it's a fund, separate fund.
Everything else is general.
So we could make a decision to eliminate the tennis fund as a separate item.
And the tennis folks would scream for sure, but
Or,
yes.
I mean, the other alternative is simply to show it without changing the actual flow of funds in any shape or form. Just show it differently when we're doing it, we're trying to understand how the park's doing.
Yeah, that's the P and L.
Why don't we go to the?
I'd like to make a comment about the tennis
Next.
fund. The reason the tennis fund is put in a special fund was years ago when it was put in the general fund, it was embezzled out to be used for other issues and not maintenance of the tennis courts or anything having to do with the tennis
It
courts.
was transferred. That's what-
Whatever buzzword you wanna use, you put it in general fund and it was
Yeah, okay, yes,
disappeared.
but
And the
at the
town
same
was
point,
left with a
at the
huge
same
maintenance
point.
issue.
at
You
the
guys, sorry, actually, let's keep it moving forward. We don't need to go back to that.
Not very good
This
deal.
latest revenues.
We'll have this discussion again.
I'll never visit a park again. Miscellaneous revenues, we're budgeting them at 300,000. This includes like, tree inspection fees, what is it? Code enforcement citations, interest, play school, cell antennas is all in here. So,
And 14-15 was up there because of a payment from Facebook? Was
no,
that it?
14-15, it's because 450,000 was because the C&D deposit forfeitures was.
Oh, that's right, we want to move that.
No, but I thought we increased the cell fees, the cell,
Right,
license
the
fees.
cell fees, the cell tower fees increase 5% each year, but it's, this miscellaneous revenue includes not just cell antenna fees, it includes interest, it includes other.
Understood, but
Inspections.
I guess I misremembered. I thought we were more aggressive with our permit, yeah.
Yeah.
Will that appear on this sheet?
That will appear in the next fiscal year, probably. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll be able to follow up.
So that number should actually go
I
up.
think our estimate's gonna be higher than 318. Or is it-
Will our actual this year,
The cell towers is now just permit fee, it's a plan, it's a deposit.
Okay, but we draw against it, but
We
it's.
draw against it, it's not revenue, it's a
The
deposit.
CNG was one time, or do we have another accrual?
That was a one-time at
Flushed it
that
out?
time, that we reviewed the C&D, the C&D tickets that were not turned in, so once the project is closed, they have a certain time frame to turn in those.
Yeah, I know
So
that.
they've been forfeited.
Was that just 1 year's worth or several years?
That
worth?
was several years.
Okay.
So that's why it was at 770,000. We don't anticipate, I mean,
my question, Robert, though, is the 300 conservative, or when will we see the impact of the increase in the cell tower fees, whatever category they're in?
Yeah, he was just expressing that we treat those as a deposit that we draw against, much like a Carton Field planning project. They deposit 15K, we draw against that for staff time and resources. So how that gets reflected in the budget,
it's just through the, we draw our, expense,
salaries,
salaries
and costs.
against it, yeah.
Against
So this, I thought you said this did include, this 300 does include cell,
It includes our cell site lease.
cell site leases.
That's what involved.
Okay.
That's what I meant, cell antenna site lease.
Yeah, because your costs are actual for staff and everything.
Correct.
Okay.
So now we're moving to expenditures. Go through this real quick.
Oh,
General admin, it's static, 988,000, city council, city attorney, and admin fees. The council decreased by 9,127. You can see it's just basic operations decreases. Admin increased by 1,185. Just basically retiree health pay as you go decreased, and then there's projected salary benefits adjustments within, and decrease in special events and awards. I don't know if you want me to go through the goals. There's goals
Gotta get to
in
the
finance,
business.
663, static, changes, basic, major increase 16,371, expenditures in contract services, increase, banking services, audit, finance expenditure increase. They're all minimum, the total is 16,371. Planning and building, their budget is at 1.4 million for 16-17. Again, it's just based on building permit fees and costs. Planning increase of an increase of 6,161. Contract planner expense. Building department decrease of 49,942. And it's just reflected in some salaries and benefits. Reduction in digital archiving, as we've done a majority of that in this fiscal year. Interdepartment, it's 502,000 this budget. That 14-15 actual includes the 1,020,000 we contributed to OPEB. That's why it's so high. But interdepartment 502,000 includes our liability insurance, IT support, and other expenditures. Public Works, we're expecting a 1.7 million. 16-17 budget decreased by 71,587. Increase in public works director contract expense, facility electrical repairs and maintenance decrease. One of that's due to the event garden being completed this year. Custodial contract expenditure was a slight increase, and then you have increase in GIS support, and then there's a major decrease in building improvement expenditures as we finish the roof and kitchen at the pavilion. Here's the parks program income statement.
I'm sorry, Rob, just to go back real quick. Public Works Department, there's a decrease $71,000, right? Including a slight increase in contract expense, is that right?
Correct.
But we're just talking about the number of projects we got and all the stuff that's going on. I'm surprised there's a decrease of $71,000. If we say we're stretched at the max, we got all this happening.
This is the general fund public works, the operations like MCE, street light maintenance and stuff. So,
Right. Okay.
So here's a park program income statement, reflects what you have in the extra handout. So don't want to go through this. Police department, fiscal year 16-17 budget 6.6 million. Pretty much been static. Increase of 332,000. There's some changes. UAL payment went up 68,000. There was an increase to 424,000. Workers' compensation charge, we increased it 1%, and it increased the expense by 25,000. Operation budget expense increased by 157,000. Majority of that's due to the equipment replacement, 2 vehicles at 105,000, and then the 76,000 for defibrillators, body cameras, repeaters, mobile broadband routers.
Question.
Yes.
Seeing how we all, with the exception of Rick, we're at PD 101, it's very nice, by the way. Wouldn't it be prudent for us?
Did you get that, Barbara?
Let the record show.
Chief, wouldn't it be prudent for us to hire one additional officer? Because it seems like for the last 5 years, we're always in the hole, at least, to cover the gap, to maybe minimize the overtime and everything, the expenditure we're paying for that, and just try to get to full staff and hold it.
Well, it seems like we're always behind the ball, always trying to hire. Like you said, we are slated for 21 sworn, and we've been at 21 sworn. I think PD 101 I told you for about 2-3 months. But right now we're just in a spot where we have 21 sworn, we're down to 17, and of those 17, 3 are on medical leave, so we're down to 14. So we're trying to hire as many as we can, and we have people in the pipeline now. But it's just, it's easier said than done. If it was easy as just hiring a body, and also from the PD 101, you got just the hiring process and how it's just not overnight. It's a lengthy process. So to answer your question, yes, yes, we wanna hire.
Yeah, I know that budgetary wise, I mean, we're in the hole either, damn termites.
I'm just talking to my kids.
Those your kids?
So I know that, being in the hole, because we often have somebody that's out on medical, which we can't hire until. So even to say we're full staff is usually questionable, because even full staff means somebody's out at times. So by trying to get up to full capacity plus one, maybe you'll have a full staff, and we could reduce the overall cost of.
So your suggestion, Councilmember Weist, is to have a ghost position, basically, an extra position that you're authorized to fill to, if you need to
Right.
cover somebody who's out on medical leave or something like that.
I think I heard.
The challenge is, if we hire that extra position, say you raise it to 22 sworn,
Right.
Yes.
and we have somebody out on medical leave,
Right.
and we hire that extra person, that body's here, we're back up to 21, and then that person comes back from medical leave. Now we're actually 22 people staffed. It's a
Right.
good thing to work with, because they give them that extra room if they're that close, but if they're down that far, it doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, but you look at the overtime numbers, and then we start curing those costs, and again, going on
Mhm.
my experience with the number, we've been in the hole, and so we've been paying these large overtime amounts, when we can actually have a body and have sorry, he's not making the overtime, he's making base pay, and I don't know if you've done an analysis, can we save money by actually hiring one to have a full staff?
If it was the same price, a trade of salary to overtime,
Yeah.
and everything else was a wash, George has the flexibility of moving the money around, but when you bring on an additional person, then you have the pension liabilities and you've got the other costs associated with it, and I think that far surpasses it. I would rather leave it the way it is right now, personally, from my perspective. And if we need to make a change, we can always do it with a mid-year adjustment, or the chief would work with George, as opposed to just making an authorization for an extra head right now.
Can we get an
That's my
analysis of
consensus.
that? Because there's math at the end of the day. There's an answer to that question.
Yeah.
If someone could look at it, that'd be enormously helpful.
Okay, we can do that sort of analysis.
Yeah.
I mean, if it papers out, then, it makes it easier for us to say yes or no.
But look at it from a long-term perspective. Please don't look at it just from a periodic, which is sometimes we do.
Right. And I think we've tried, when we first went to the 21 sworn, we got that, when we were fully staffed, and Joe's correct, it was only a couple months. And our thinking was, well, we're gonna be fully staffed, so overtime should diminish, right? So we have to get to a position where we are fully staffed, and then we have to take out training, anything that's mandatory, and then look at it from, okay, we're fully staffed, did they go to training, how much overtime is it because of training that was mandatory? There's just gonna be a minimal overtime amount, and we just kind of don't know yet what that would be.
Yeah, the overtime and salary is a balance. It's math, but it's also the ability to recruit and what the market
Right.
looks like
Yeah.
and things like that. So we can do a summary.
Yeah, it'd be helpful
Action
to
council.
know when we're
Yeah.
making a decision in 6 months, or
Right.
whatever it is.
Okay. Anything on P?
On your PD, sorry,
No, it's fine.
back to the lieutenant, on the items that you described as the purchase items, those are all transitional into a new facility, does that sound right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. I just didn't, I know that, George, thank you for sending that out, it was helpful, I'm sure it came from you, to understand what that stuff was. So, I just didn't want it to be something we throw away.
So here's that status right now, where we're at with the 21 officers, with a total of 29.
Those 16 volunteers/reserves, those aren't just, are those officers as well as dispatchers?
Some of them are per diem dispatchers. We have 6 per diem dispatchers, 3 reserve officers.
There's a chaplain and
We have, so the bulk of those come from our crime prevention task force. There's 8 of them, but they do not work in any sort of a patrol capacity, or they can't assist with the day-to-day operations. The folks that can assist with the day-to-day operations are generally the reserves, and right now we have 2 of them. One of them is out on leave, and the other one has a full-time job, so we utilize them when we can, and we're they are helpful.
And I noticed, and I wanna reiterate, I'm pleased that you guys are looking at hiring 2 additional reserves that are level 1.
Yes.
Seems to be very difficult to get that done. Sorry, thank you.
So right now, you have, you're short on the police officer category and the sergeant category?
So we'll just call it a
I mean, I know you're short on the police category, the chief category at the moment.
Yes, correct. And in the sergeant category, we're short 1. We will have him back at the end of the month.
And what about the police officer category? You're short 3?
Yes. So, well, we're actually short, yes, we're short 3. And we just lost 1. We lost 1, we gained 1. So I actually misspoke because he just literally stopped working as a full-time on Friday. It was Motor Officer TJ Boyle. So he's actually a reserve now. So we have 3 reserves. And he'll work, he'll do his minimum 16 hours, but still it's a loss. It's another position that we have to fill. And he's not there regularly.
So, and the people that you have that are on light duty, do we utilize them as light duty something? So do we get something for our pay, or do we
You
just
know,
nothing?
yeah, that's a great question. It's really tricky because depending on why they're gone, they have restrictions, and all the restrictions are different per their position. And some of the restrictions literally require, it's more of a liability to bring them in. I can't bend over for more than 15 minutes, can't do this, can't lift more than 8 pounds, can't lift anything over your head. So once you get these restrictions, we're really hamstrung to do, short of, some office gig where we can have them stapling, and then we get, how many pounds of pressure are you putting on the stapler before? So the short answer is no, we have not been utilizing the current people we have based on the ailments that they have.
Except one, Sergeant Coker comes in.
Yeah, I would say I saw him at PD 101 when I was at PD 101.
He does light duty.
I thought I'm on a kayak.
Okay, right,
Alright.
let's keep it moving.
Okay, now the summary, general fund revenues to expenditures, so this is without the parcel tax, so 4.4 million. It includes the ERAF of 1,033,000 to expenditures of 12,056,000. So our net change of fund balance is 2.4 million. Next slide is
So
with
wait,
the
just a
parcel
question. So so the net revenues, I understand it doesn't include the parcel tax, but the parcel tax is flat between the 2 years.
Right.
The net revenues between last year and this year's estimated is down a little bit.
on the 15-16.
Yeah,
Budget?
the 14-15
Okay.
verse, not budget, but our current estimate of 15-16 versus 14-15.
It's down because one, the revenue is down by about 200,000, close to 200,000 in 15-16 estimate compared to the 14-15 actual.
Yeah.
And the expenditure is up in 14-15 it was 11.6 million.
Right, I'm just looking at the revenue piece. I'm surprised that it's down. I mean, I know the,
And
Because
it's
of the
600,000, it's not,
It's not 200,000.
In 14-15 the ERAF was 1,020,000. In 15-16 it was 1,066,000. And for this year it's 1,033,000.
that's the estimate. But, okay, well, this slide is showing 140,000 less revenue from last year's actual to this year's estimated. And I understand we're down on ERAF by about 140,000. But that would say, but I thought
It
our
would be-
property taxes went up, so
Right,
it's
it's
surprising that
another-
they're flat.
It's other revenues that are probably that are less in our estimate.
So we
this
probably,
year.
we probably have about 300,000 of additional property taxes, and we had 300,000 less of sales taxes this year than last year. I understand that. That was a one
That
time.
was a swing, right? That's a component of it,
Okay.
because you're right.
Okay, that's fine. It's just a little surprising.
Had the 680,000 in sales tax. And this next slide includes the 372 parcel tax for 16-17. So we're at 14.8 million into expenditures of 12 million, and the net is 2,785,000.
Robert, are you comfortable with that net? It's, what is it, about 22, 23%? I'm not great at math, but it's gotta be somewhere in that ballpark, which seems like a big figure to me.
It's, well, you got 372,000 and 1,066,000 in ERAF that are included in here as revenue. The 2.7, I mean, I think one thing that's kind of, other than revenues increasing, the expenditures have been kind of static. They haven't been ballooning, if you can see from, 13, 14, it was 11.7 million. And, each year after that, it hasn't been a huge incremental increase. And
there's lots of things that attributed to that, and that's, we paid the OPEB from ERAF, we've done a number of
Right.
things to keep our operational costs at a static level. If you go backwards to, 12, 13, 11, 12, that blue line is a heck of a lot closer, I'm colorblind, blue line's a heck of a lot closer to that.
Going on the right.
Yeah.
If not flipped.
right. Yeah, on 11-12, I think our net was like a negative 13,000.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at it. It's just a big percentage, right? We're saying 2.7 million out of 14 million. I'm not
So you
great at
could
the
give a
math.
partial tax hiatus for 1 year and we wouldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
Which is what a friend of mine asked me at lunch today. He said, you got 3 million extra, why don't you just not have a partial tax?
Well,
for 1 year?"
we just talked about that we have all these things
I'm
in
just
these
saying.
plans, okay?
Yeah, no,
And
I
Mr.
agree. And
Pothole-
moving into the capital plans, let's put it for potholes.
Okay, general fund reserves policy, so if you take all that out, so you have 12,056,000 in our expenditure, our projected year-end fund balance is 10,224,000. So you back out of that 10,224,000, you got 15% allocated for emergency, so that's 1.8 million. 20% contingency reserve for stabilization, and that's 2.4 million. We increased our capital replacement reserve, last year was 505,000, this year's 1,005,000. So the total reserve requirement is 5.2 million. Subtracted from that 10.2 million fund balance, we have a unallocated reserve of $5 million. And that's a policy that was kind of, we followed last year with the council, they wanted to set that, have an unallocated reserve of $5 million. We decided that, staff recommends us do that again.
So that's saying that there's 224,000 that's being transferred to CIP, is that what that is?
No. So that 10.2 million minus that 5.224 million, 749, see the total reserve requirement?
I see.
Includes all those three topics.
I see.
And those monies, the 20 and the 15 will be pushed over if not used into the next year, correct?
Those every year that's
That's just a
calculated
calculation.
based off of your expenditures.
So this chart though will actually change based on the council's direction tonight, not to allocate 443 of ERAF, because this includes ERAF, correct?
Well, yeah, the ERAF's in there and that it's net of that 10.2 million. So here's that slide. So this 10,224,000 is net of these transfers out. So we said of that 4.7 million at the first slide at the beginning, 453,960 was the pension liability reserve, 112,000 was the minimum equity reserve, and that 4.1 million transfers out. It will change, that 453 will move into the transfers out bucket.
So we're transferring $4.5 million into future CIP, whereas last year we transferred 2.3.
Yes, sir.
That's not what I thought we talked about doing. I thought we were gonna pay the full $548,950.
That's already in the operations budget.
No, but he's saying, take it out of the operations budget, reduce the operations budget, pay that from the ERAF, so the op budget goes down. It's still money moving buckets, but it'll still go up by that 400, it'll be 4.5, 4.6.
I mean, that unfunded liability assessment is allegedly a temporary thing, and so I don't think it should be part of the normal operating budget. It should be treated as a special expenditure.
So if I understand Bob, he's saying move ERAF to cover that, and that would increase the transfer to CIP.
Not the way I view it. That transfer to CIP would be done at the end of the year, right?
We'll do it at the beginning of the fiscal year.
July 1.
All this is gonna happen at the beginning. The transfers out meaning that
Because ERAF is over.
it's coming out. It's going out to either another fund or it's going to be cut a check.
So what Bob is saying is, instead of 12,056,000, our operating budget would be 11,006,000.
Yeah.
Because we'd be paying over 500 something from ERAF. Is that calculation here, instead of 453, it's 558. There's no separate fund established. There's not 500,000 that goes to that capital facility reserve. That gets reduced a little bit, and then the difference still rolls over into the CIP, so the 4.1 still goes out.
Right, but the rolls over part is the thing I don't quite get. The 10,224 fund balance is a projected ending balance for the next fiscal year. So I don't think you're gonna, I don't understand that you
That's
would.
supposed to be 15, 16, right?
No, the 16, 17 is
The projected fiscal year
ending, that's at the end of the fiscal year.
following year?
So we would, that rollover we're talking about happens later on.
The beginning of the next fiscal year, I think.
The next fiscal
I
year.
think that's right.
Yeah. So that 10.2 would be the ending fiscal year fund balance, and it's already, what's taken out of that 10.2 million is that 4.7 million transfers out, which is this amount.
And I'm sorry, Bob, I know you're drilling into this, but we got about 25 minutes till 5 o'clock, and we've also got to talk about the business license ordinance. So I'd love to wrap this up fairly quickly if you're getting what you need, unless the council members have other. Okay.
Well, I'm a little confused, but
Maybe you guys can meet afterwards, yeah.
we can move on.
Yeah, I'd like to get on to the business license.
Okay, and yeah, this just kind of goes over the ERAC policy, what we've done over the past couple of years, so. That's it.
Good, Robert.
Thank you.
Did you get what you needed, Robert?
Yes, yes.
Fill us full of things, Robert. Thank you.
Don't leave, Robert, 'cause you're going again. Okay.
Okay.
These
Item
two.
3.
Item 3 it is.
Who's up?
Robert.
Speed up, Robert. Mike's got somewhere to go.
No, we were on.
So, business license, we have the staff report before you, we've held discussions in 14 regarding alternative revenue alternatives. And then 15, we brought the current fees in the ordinance, we had discussion regarding the business tax ordinance, how it's established, and how we levy business tax. So, Community Services is our business license processor. So in this staff report, in considering amendments to business license, we want to remove, number
We're
one.
one shy of these.
Yeah, I
Bill
didn't get
get
one. You didn't pass one on. I read the report, it was very well written.
Okay.
But I didn't get the chart.
So, we want to, 3 items to consider. Remove or modify the flat tax, or base the tax solely on gross receipts, or solely on a flat tax, or blended combination of. And the third option is also expand the types of business categories to incorporate all businesses within that category. So it's a general tax for the city. There's 4 categories. You can see category 1, 2, 3, 4. And they range from $250 at the category 1 to category 4 at $50. In fiscal year 14-15, we have 1547 business licenses issued, 1598 in fiscal year 15-16. And over below is you see the business license revenue over the last 5 years. So another caveat is revenue from business license taxes basically directly correlated to construction activity in the town. So the categories in fiscal year 14-15, we've had we took all the different applicants, the number of applicants between each category, and the current fees. We get a total of $271,850. And again, the license is 5% of gross receipts derived during the license year from business conducted in the town, or a flat fee. And then the main thing is whichever is lower. So always the flat fee, as you can see, $250 to $50 is always lower than the gross receipts. So that's how our current business license is. In 15-16, we have 1,598 applicants. There you can see the different
Can I
categories.
just ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Gross receipts is gross receipts of the business in general, or gross receipts of the business's activity in Atherton?
Activity now.
So that was $196 million for category 1 per this report is what is, you're saying, 15-16, total $250 million, more than that.
Right. So these are the gross receipts by category by year. Right? We provided provided to us by Community Services. You can see majority of the grocery receipts are in categories 1 and 2, which is general contractors and subcontractors. So part of bringing this to council was to do an analysis and discussion of, if you want to do the grocery receipts, how could we do this, right? It'd have to be by a multiplier, because we can't just do a straight grocery receipts of 5%. So it'd have to be a multiplier. So provided in the staff report in here is three options basically: 25 cents per 100, 20 cents per 100, or 15 cents per 100.
I have a question. We can't do 5%, then why do we calculate it based on 5%? Seems like some legal requirement?
It's the state. The state came and says there has to be, it's kind of a, material testing or fact. You can't, it's, what's
I mean, why don't we make it 0.25% and eliminate this extra step? I don't quite get why that is, but.
It's Government Code Section 37101B.
Has to be reasonable.
Yeah.
So 5% isn't reasonable, so why wouldn't it be a quarter? I
Yeah,
don't quite
yeah.
get the step. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I don't get the step.
So, one way to bypass the government code and to make it more palatable is these multipliers. So a lot of agencies do this multiplier. So these are just suggestions on multipliers based on the grocery receipts, and you can see at 25 cents per 100 it's 529,000. At 20 cents it's 423, and at 50 cents 317. In addition to that, we said recommend maybe let's keep a minimum fee of 250,000. So if you did that,
$250.
Sorry. If you did that, you'd have $386,000. And so you can see if you combine them at the bottom of the PowerPoint, you can see if you take the 529 plus the 386, it'd be 916,000, and then we follow down the line, so it'd be 704,000 respectively. So this is the 15-16, we do the same thing, did the gross receipts for the 15-16 year, and then provided the multiplier calculations. So you can see that it's 678,000 by 25 cents per 100, 542, and then 407,000 at 15 cents per 100. Minimum fee still $250. 399,500 would be the minimum fee.
So the business would pay the minimum plus the multiplier.
So it'd be $1 million at 25 cents, roughly.
Right.
And that pays for, since it's mostly construction, that pays for the code enforcement officer who handles mostly construction issues. It pays for the arborist who goes out and looks at tree protection, which is mostly construction, although they do a couple other little things. Plus, PD gets called out periodically on construction activities as well. So, from my perspective, the 25 cents per 100 plus the 250, I think makes sense, unless we want to, as you discussed last year, Rick, on these smaller companies, we don't charge the 25 cents, we charge a lesser amount. If they're, a small subcontractor, like a plumber who's coming in and doing this or that, which I thought made a lot of sense last year.
So, a couple comments. The analysis approach of comparing our costs related to construction to these amounts is more in the fee category than the tax category, right? Because we legally are able to recover our fees from what we charge. That would include, our expenses from what we charge fees for, like building fees. But we're legally authorized to tax people who have a business in the town. And this is in the tax category, which is why to change this requires a vote of the voters. When I step back and think about it in that context, and I think that these categories are skewed this way because we're actively enforcing the tax for people in categories 1 and 2. and we're not actively enforcing the tax for people in categories 3 and 4. And I think so the way I look at it, stepping back from this, I think, okay, there's sort of two types of businesses that actually exist in the town at a structural level. One is businesses that do work in the town and may or may not be based in the town. They're probably almost entirely not based in the town in terms of, they're contractors or subcontractors that are based somewhere else, and they're doing work in the town. That's categories 1 and 2. There's another category of work in the town, which is people that do work on our residences. They may be cleaning work, they may be pool work, they may be personal assistant work, but they're coming into our residence to provide services, and we don't capture most of those people. And those people are, in some cases, one-employee businesses, but in some cases they're multiple employee businesses. They're cleaning service or pool service with, 3 or 20 people in their business, and they're going out doing this for people all around. And they are frankly within a category up there, but we don't really do much to capture them, but they're real businesses. Now third, and I think most of them probably have they live not inside Atherton. They just provide service inside of Atherton. And I kind of look at them as, some form of service to our residents. And then the third category of business are our residents who have a business from their house, and in the ordinance, they're called home occupations, I think. And though that category, I have no idea what was contemplated by the words of home occupations, but today that category is almost 100%, I think, consultants. Because we have plenty of people that are consultants that work as business consultants like some of us do, or as investor consultants, or some form of consultant. And probably, but I don't know, but probably almost all of that business is conducted outside of Atherton. And they are by the current ordinance, they're required to get a license that's in category 3 as home occupations. We don't do anything to try to make that happen, whether we want to or not, because we're talking about revenue here, we're not talking about regulation. I just think we should be cognizant of what do we want. But to me, I really think we have sort of two structural levels: people that are businesses that are based in Atherton, or businesses, whether they're based in Atherton or not, but they're providing some form of service in Atherton, and businesses that are based in Atherton but are conducting their business elsewhere. And then there's 3 categories. There's the construction trade, which is what we've targeted this business tax to, but there's also service providers in our homes, and there's Atherton residents that are providing some form of service. And I think we need to think about how we want to handle all that. But I think it's a good thing to restructure this ordinance. It intends to cover, it expressly intends to cover horseshoers, which there probably are none left in Atherton.
We're all over the place.
Well, it might be at the circus club.
There's a lot of horse something.
They do horseshoeing at the circus club.
They're probably, I was thinking that it was a business based in Atherton, but you're right, there probably are.
I got a point of clarity question. So Bill mentioned the arborist and code enforcement, and Rick mentioned over here the same thing, saying, so in the building permit process, in the fees, are we charging off code enforcement, arborist? Because that almost sounds like a double taxation. So if we are, it's one way. If we're not,
It's built in. That's why we have the master fee schedule. So it was built in. The building permit fees take into consideration all those categories. But if someone comes in wants a tree inspection, there's a tree inspection fee for that.
well, we don't have a code enforcement fee.
No.
So that would be something that I would do with Bill on that side.
Nor a
It sounds
police
like
response fee.
Right.
nor PD response. So 2 of the things Bill had make a lot of sense to me. I agree. If we're already charging them for an arborist over here, we can't hit them over here. So we so I agree, there should be an incremental step, in my opinion. And in consideration, if we're not recapping those costs, we gotta figure out a way that, we can recap those costs maybe in that fee. But maybe the 25 cents is too high. I think that either way we do anything, we should always do incremental steps, because there's always and relook at it next year, so.
To be clear, it's a tax, not a fee.
Right.
So it doesn't have to match, and the arborist, they come in to get their building permit, and they may get a tree removal permit, and the arborist will go out and inspect. But also, on occasion, the code enforcement officer will call in the arborist, hey, come look at this, do you think this is an issue or not? We're not recollecting that sort of cost to the town, and those happen.
Plus our permit fees and our building department inspection fees, I don't know when we've calculated them, if we said, and oh, by the way, we only get half of that because the other half goes to MCE or Interwest for doing that work. And which I assume it probably didn't, because our permit fees and our building department fees are fairly low, and
Well, they're based on an estimate of work done, either by by Interwest or us. But my assumption is, or my guess is, there's more work that actually occurs than that fee
We're
really
getting,
covers in some cases.
Well, that argues for changing the fee, though, it doesn't.
Yeah, but we've done a whole study and said, okay, the average construction project is this many inspections, this much time, but sometimes it's more.
so.
There are gaps, we just can't really identify them all.
I think we do pretty good at covering. I mean, there's always going to be people falling through the cracks,
Yes.
and we don't have the manpower to chase everybody. But I do think that there is room in that base fee related to contractors to make sure that we are whole and reasonable to cover some of those costs that Bill has mentioned, and as well as Rick. So I do think that in some form of our calculations, and if it's 20 cents per plus on, or 15, as long as we're going upward in the sense that make sure we're covering some of our.
So Hillsboro's 50 cents per hundred, right? And I don't know how that plays out for them. Do they have, you mentioned that in the staff report, 50 cents per hundred. But do they have a flat fee also?
Yes, well, they have $100 administration fee, which would be the flat fee.
So from my perspective, Robert, I mean, if the question is, should we do something to these fees? I think the answer is yes. This feels like, okay, so we're over that threshold. And then Rick raised, I hadn't even focused on stuff you raised, Rick, which I was sort of looking at the numbers and doing the math, but we have control over these categories too, right? We can decide who are, that's worthy of some real thought.
Yeah, but I mean, one of my concerns was, well, should we be exempting some people? I mean, somebody has someone who is a cleans their home or comes in and takes care of their parent, and that health worker or that domestic worker, earns probably not a lot of money and probably is a sole practitioner, but fits into category 4, I think, fits into one of the categories. Should we exempt them?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why I was trying to go with also leading into what you talked about last year. Maybe category 3 and maybe some category 4s we exempt, and then the big numbers are, I mean, if you look at the revenue, the gross receipts and things like that, the category 1 guys are the guys that are pulling the most money out of the town, that are impacting the infrastructure, that are causing us to expend additional operational costs. And I think that should be, as well as category 2, and I think that should be, those are bigger companies, and those would be where we should focus.
I think I agree with that. I do want to explore this. I don't know what home occupation is either, but there are a lot of people who work out of their homes in Atherton, and we should have a transparent discussion about whether we want a license for that or not.
And if there's, if it's a 0.15% of revenue, some of those people are making a lot of money. I'm not saying we should necessarily do that, but this is a tax. This is a business license tax.
Yeah, it also requires a lot of honesty.
And a question, those people at home, you have 2 issues going here. One is enforcement of the people there vis-a-vis a tax, increase the revenue of the tax. So would enforcement achieve the same objects without what I consider bad political optics at this time? Say, hey, we got $3 million surplus, we want to tax you guys one more time, given the down ballot issues of 2016 fact that Palo Alto's business taxes got bad press again, and 2 school taxes in Menlo Park apparently failed. So I'm just saying from a political optics standpoint, as opposed to maybe enforcement, might be a better route, at least for now.
Category 1, Category 2 are not residents for the most
No,
part.
I was alluding to what Kerry said about home businesses,
Yeah.
and Rick had said the same
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
And would enforcement increase that, and then if we have to increase the other things maybe later, I'm saying the political optics currently may not be the best time to be doing this.
I'm actually going in a different direction. I actually think I'd be inclined to strike it, not to enforce it, or at least to look at that. I mean, I don't like having something on the books that if we know there's a bunch of people who are working out of their homes and we know that we're not enforcing that, I don't like that.
They're working out of their
Yeah,
homes,
that's
and
too much effort.
therefore they can afford that expensive home, and they can afford all our property taxes, and they can afford our parcel tax, and everything's cool.
There's 2 areas related to home occupations. The first is they all require a business license if they are indeed operating a business. The second and most significant impact of home occupations is in our land use ordinance. That's where we're regulating home occupations for truck traffic, deliveries, employees coming and going to the house. Those are the external factors for which we can enforce when we're aware of them. Outside of that, it's a sleuthing exercise to go find them in the Bureau of Equalization and all that sort of stuff to find out tax records, if they're occupying a business or not.
But I don't think that we're trying, as somebody that's sitting in his house is getting taxed, personally already, and he's paying his taxes, we hope. But the reality is that his impact on the town of Atherton is, we don't even know he's there.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that we're trying to recover things that we have noticed that are costing the town something, so I think that's what we identified. We're zeroing in a little bit more on the 1 and 2 level. Even though he may make a lot of money, but the reality is, he's not bothering anybody, and he's already getting gouged by Sacramento and Washington.
What I'm saying, that is, if we're gonna go and change the statute, or change the reg, why not clarify it?
Well, I think
because right now, if we know people are technically caught by this and they're not paying it, and we don't want them to pay it, why not just
take it off?
Either take it off or define it more precisely. So if you're working by yourself, whatever it is, you define it in a way that people are not in violation.
I agree, but when George mentioned service of goods, let's just say the guy's sitting there and he's selling concrete bricks, and everybody comes to deliver. There's an impact there, and that's a home occupation, but he's doing products through his house or internet. There's another, hypothetical. He may have people come into his house all the time because he's selling goods on the internet.
That's the neighborhood impact of home occupations. So you could eliminate them from the business license requirement and then impose a fee on home occupations. If you're gonna have a home occupation, there's a fee you pay. That fee is based on how much code enforcement has to regulate your activity. You set the standards. You can only have 3 deliveries a month. You can only have no employees. That sort of thing is on the standards. And we have those in our zoning code now.
I guess my question, if we have a consultant who works out of his house and is, just got an office downstairs he's working out of, or a lawyer who's doing that, whatever it is that person practicing a home occupation, and technically should that person have a business
$100
license?
tax.
Yeah.
$100 business license.
You pay yours?
No.
Oh, there we go.
I wonder how
Officer?
many people.
Right, exactly.
I guess my thought would be, if we're changing the statute, I'd rather clarify that person, I think, should be paying for a license.
Yeah.
It's different if people are coming by and dropping, whatever, if there's some big impact in the neighborhood, I get that. But if it's just, Rick doing some extra work and he's not bothering anybody, he's on his computer at 10 o'clock at night, it's not.
Well, I think 3 of us have said maybe we should exempt that.
Entirely.
But we should define it, as you're saying, to where it says individual person working, but no deliveries, etc., other than FedEx or whatever. But you're not getting raw materials in or shipping stuff out and those type of things.
Yeah, it needs to be updated because currently it says you can't have a website if you have a home occupation. You can't have business cards. You can't have advertising anywhere.
Well, it doesn't say you can't have business cards.
Well,
No,
obviously,
it says you can't have you can't advertise.
Correct.
So obviously that section should be brought back to us at a later date so we can clean up that language.
Yeah, I've heard the word deliveries more than once, and if you pay attention to what's happening in the shopping world, I mean, this town's gonna be full of delivery. My wife's in Amazon Prime, and I'm swear to God, she gets a Christmas present every day. So that's 30 days a month. And that's just my little tiny house in Elaine Park. It could be, she works for somebody.
you're not
else,
reselling it, are
they
you?
get a truckload.
Are you reselling it?
No, I'm not selling it.
That's,
Unless you're
that's
paying
what
my,
I'm closer to 5. Let me
unless
just
you're
make
paying
sure
my
that,
capital gains tax.
you know, if I can't, just to
No,
make
I
sure,
need your-
all right,
the goods.
Bill, let's just figure out, to try to get this, what are you looking for us right now to get from us?
Direction
And-
on what type of framework you would be comfortable with, if you want us to also bring back the home occupations, change that a little bit.
I think we would like to bring that back. In terms of, do you need direction in terms of specific numbers on this?
Well,
Or looking at-
yeah, they're looking at a business license tax change, which the recommendation is that it have both a category, flat fee, plus a percentage of gross receipts component for at least the first 2 categories, right?
Yep.
And the recommendation is at 0.25 per hundred, which with the flat fee is projected to generate about $1 million in the next year. This is last year.
And we have to have it implemented when?
There's a big caveat. This, to do all this, it
Yes.
has to go to election.
It has to be on the ballot in November.
In November.
So we could come back sometime in July and discuss what other options, refine it.
You don't have that long.
I
before
don't
you
want to
move forward.
discuss options. If you can come up with, you're comfortable with the
Yeah.
0.25 for 100 for the first 2 categories, flat fee of 250, we can go do that. We can then look at other ordinances
Yeah.
to expand what some of those categories are,
Yeah.
and make it more up to date,
And-
and then amend the home occ.
So moved.
Second.
All 3.
Hold on, we're not actually.
Who's running the show?
But I do think that's the sense of the council that yes, we're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
That's what we want, we
But-
want to tax the real estate broker.
I'd like
Exactly.
you to
Double.
send around a brief summary, like you did with Los Altos Hills, of what is done in Hillsborough, because they're using something closer to what you're I think Los Altos Hills does it, but Hillsborough is doing that with a slightly larger number, right? 0.5.
Yeah, they get about $680,000 in business license taxes every year.
Yeah, we're proposing.
But I think, don't they have a little bit of commercial in their community?
Yes, they do. It's light,
Yeah, yeah, they have.
maybe 1 street.
Yeah.
So what,
Did you get what you need?
I did.
Okay.
what are the Palo Altos and Menlo Parks, the non-Atherton-like places, what do they do?
Well, they have actual businesses. We didn't even look at that because, we don't have.
Their categories are much
Yeah, what
broader.
about Woodside Portola Valley?
Woodside they gave us for Portola Valley, or Monte Sereno would be a good one to look at.
Yeah.
And how do you verify, I mean, where do you get these numbers charging?
You mean how we tax them?
Yeah, so some guy comes in and he's building a house, he builds a house for somebody.
Gross receipt.
He feels, yeah.
It's on today, on the
He fills
permit.
out a form and tells us what his gross receipts are.
He doesn't want to get caught out there, so he comes in here and says, hey, I want to get a business license, and we say, this is what you have to do. And what project you working on? And how
Which
much?
he's already kinda done when he got his permit.
Well, when they catch him over there at
Yeah.
the building department.
Part of the
All
checklist.
subs, all contractors,
Okay,
check
so-
off list.
And they won't sign
So
you off
we don't
unless
have to
you've got
hire
a
a
business
full-time
license.
detective, it's
No.
fairly, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think that pretty much wraps if you get a motion.
Oh, so moved.
Then we adjourn.